Every love story has a beginning, but some love stories are remembered because they survive time. This is the story of William Carter and Elizabeth Morgan, a story of love, distance, a promise, and a letter that changed everything. In a small valley of 19th century America, two hearts made a promise that would be tested by years of separation. This is the last letter of Rosewood Valley. The year was 1865. America was trying to heal after years of war. Across the country, people were rebuilding their homes, their families, and their dreams. But many hearts were still carrying the pain of everything they had lost. In a quiet valley, surrounded by mountains and rivers, there was a small, peaceful town called Rosewood Valley. It was a simple place. Wooden houses stood beside dusty roads. Farmers worked in the fields. Horse carriages moved slowly through the village. And every evening, the church bell reminded everyone that life was moving forward. But one man returned to this town, carrying memories that would change his life forever. His name was William Carter. William was 26 years old. Before the war, he was known as a happy young man. He loved music, he loved nature, and he loved sitting beside the river, dreaming about the future. His father often told him, "William, the world is bigger than this small town. One day you will see places you never imagined." William would smile and answer, "Maybe I will leave someday, but I will always return home." But life changed. When the war began, William left Rosewood Valley and joined the army. He was young. He had dreams. He believed he would return soon. But war changes people. During those years, William saw things no young man should ever see. He lost friends. He watched families break apart. He learned that life could change in a single moment. When the war finally ended, William returned home. The people of Rosewood Valley welcomed him with happiness. But they noticed something different. The young man, who left with a bright smile, came back as a quiet man, carrying pain inside his heart. William no longer wanted adventure. He no longer dreamed about traveling. He only wanted peace. One morning, William walked toward the river where he spent his childhood days. The water was calm. The trees moved gently in the wind. For the first time in years, William felt that maybe his heart could finally heal. And then he saw her, a young woman sitting beside the river. Her name was Elizabeth Morgan. Elizabeth was 22 years old. She was kind, intelligent, and different from everyone else in the village. She loved books, she loved learning, and she dreamed of opening a school where every child could have a chance to study. Many people told Elizabeth, "Your dreams are too big." But Elizabeth believed that courage could change a person's future. When William saw her, he didn't know. This simple moment would become the beginning of the greatest love story of his life. Elizabeth looked up and smiled. She asked, "Do you always watch people silently?" William became nervous. He replied, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." Elizabeth smiled and said, "Do you always think so much before speaking?" For the first time in many years, William laughed.
After that day, William and Elizabeth started meeting often. They talked beside the river. They walked through the fields. They shared their dreams. Elizabeth listened to William's stories from the war, but she never saw him as a broken man. She saw the kindness that was still inside him. One day William said, "Everyone tells me I have changed." Elizabeth looked at him and answered, "People change, But that doesn't mean they disappear. Those words stayed in William's heart. Slowly, their friendship became love. Near the village stood an old giant oak tree. The people called it the promise tree. They believed promises made under that tree would last forever. One evening, William and Elizabeth sat beneath that tree. The sun was setting. The river was shining. The world felt peaceful. William held Elizabeth's hand and said, "I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I know one thing. You are someone I never want to lose." Elizabeth smiled. Then she brought out a small wooden box. Inside were two blank pieces of paper. She said, "Let's write letters to our future selves. After 10 years, we will open them again." William smiled and said, "10 years is a long time." Elizabeth looked at him and replied, "If something is real, even 10 years is not too long." That night, they wrote their letters. They placed them inside the wooden box, and they buried it beneath the old promise tree. Neither William nor Elizabeth knew that those letters would become the most important memories of their lives. A few months passed after William and Elizabeth made their promise under the old promise tree. Life in Rosewood Valley felt peaceful. Every day, they spent time together. They walked beside the river. They talked about their dreams. They believed nothing could separate them. But life was preparing another challenge for them. One morning, William received an opportunity far away from Rosewood Valley. He had to leave for another town. It was not an easy decision, because for the first time after the war, William had found something worth staying for: Elizabeth. The morning William prepared to leave, the entire village felt different. The roads were quiet. The wind was cold. And Elizabeth knew this goodbye would not be easy. William and Elizabeth stood beside the river where they first met. William looked at her and said, "I don't want to leave you." Elizabeth smiled sadly and replied, "Then promise me you will come back." William held her hand. "I promise." With one final look, William climbed onto his horse and started his journey. Elizabeth watched him disappear into the distance. But both of them believed their love was strong enough to survive any distance. Far away from home, William worked hard. But every night, he thought about Elizabeth. He wrote letters telling her about his life. He told her that he missed Rosewood Valley. He told her that he missed the river. He told her that he still dreamed about returning home. Every letter carried his love. Every word carried his promise. Back in Rosewood Valley, Elizabeth waited for every letter. She kept them safely. To her, those letters were pieces of William's heart. But one day, everything changed. A powerful storm arrived. Dark clouds covered the sky. Heavy rain fell across the countryside. A mail carriage was traveling through dangerous roads, carrying many important letters. Among those letters were the words William had written for Elizabeth. The storm became stronger. The old wooden bridge over the river began to break. The carriage lost control, and the mailbag fell. The leather mailbag was damaged. Many letters were destroyed. Some disappeared into the rushing river water. Some were carried away by the wind. And among those lost letters were William's letters to Elizabeth. Days passed. Weeks passed. But no letter arrived. Elizabeth waited. Every morning, she looked toward the road. Every evening, she listened for news. But nothing came. Slowly, doubt entered Elizabeth's heart. She wondered, did William forget me? Did he stop caring? But the truth was different. William was still writing. He was still waiting. He still believed in the promise they made under the promise tree. Neither of them knew the real reason their letters had disappeared. They were separated by a storm, not by a lack of love. Years slowly passed. Elizabeth continued her life in Rosewood Valley. She opened a small school. She helped children learn. The people of the village respected her kindness. But deep inside her heart, she still remembered William. She remembered the river. She remembered the promise tree. She remembered the promise. Far away, William also carried the memory of Elizabeth. He kept old photographs. He remembered their conversations. He remembered the day they promised each other forever. After many years, William finally decided to return home. He traveled back to Rosewood Valley with hope in his heart. When he arrived, everything looked familiar. The roads, the houses, the river. And then, he saw her, Elizabeth, standing near the promise tree. After 10 years, they finally saw each other again. Neither of them could speak. They only looked at each other. Because sometimes, after waiting for so long, words are not enough. William and Elizabeth stood beneath the old promise tree. After 10 years of separation, they were finally standing in front of each other again. The river was flowing quietly. The wind was moving through the old oak branches. But neither of them could speak. 10 years of memories, 10 years of waiting, and 10 years of unanswered questions were between them. Finally, William looked at Elizabeth and said, "I never stopped thinking about you." Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "I thought you forgot me." William slowly shook his head. William told Elizabeth everything. He explained the letters. He explained the storm. He explained how he had written to her again and again. But the letters never reached her. Elizabeth listened silently. For the first time in years, she understood the truth. William never abandoned her. Their love was not lost. It was only separated by time and distance. The pain they carried for so many years finally started to disappear. Then William and Elizabeth returned to the promise tree. Together, they dug into the earth and found the old wooden box they had buried 10 years before. The box was old. The papers inside were faded, but the feelings written on those pages were still alive. They opened their letters. Elizabeth read the words William wrote years ago. William read the words Elizabeth had written, and they realized their hearts had been waiting for the same moment. Elizabeth looked at William and smiled. She said, "After all these years, we finally found our way back." William smiled and replied, "Some promises are stronger than time." From that day forward, they stopped looking at the years they lost. Instead, they focused on the years they still had. They began a new chapter of their lives together. William and Elizabeth built a small home near the river. Their days became peaceful. They watched the sunrise. They walked through the fields. They listened to the sound of the water. The same river where they first met became the place where they created new memories. Rosewood Valley became their home. The old promise tree remained a symbol of their love. People in the village knew their story. They talked about the young couple who waited 10 years and still found their way back to each other. They learned that true love is not about a perfect journey. It is about staying connected, even when life creates distance. Many years later, the people of Rosewood Valley still remembered William and Elizabeth's story. They remembered the old letters. They remembered the promise. And they remembered that sometimes the most beautiful stories are not the ones without pain, but the ones that survive it. Because real love is tested by time, and only the strongest promises remain. Beneath the old oak tree, the letters remained, a reminder of two hearts, one promise, and a love that survived years of silence. This was the story of William Carter and Elizabeth Morgan, a story of distance, a story of hope, a story of a promise that was never forgotten. The last letter of Rosewood Valley.